This set of slides is about the impact of inflation on business. Inflation is broadly how much prices are generally rising by, or how much the value of money in your pocket is generally falling by. What we're interested in is the inflation rate, which is how much prices are rising year on year. Now, quite an important point here is that if the inflation rate is falling, it doesn't necessarily mean that prices are falling. So, for example, if the inflation rate was 3% and now it's 1%, it means that prices are still rising on average by 1%. Inflation is measured by the Consumer Prices Index. If you want some information on how this is compiled, speak to an economist friend or take up economics in your spare time. But broadly speaking, the statisticians, the government statisticians, measure about 180,000 items every month, and they look at how much prices have changed. The basket changes each year to reflect how our spending habits change. So these are the changes made in 2019. You can see that popcorn's in, peanut butter's in, special herbal health fruit teas are in. There's a whole load of new things that are in, and equally on the right hand side you can see that things that we no longer use so much are out. So you can see there washing powder is out because washing liquid is in. Hi-Fis are out because things like portable speakers or smart speakers are now in. If you look at inflation in the UK, I've given you two graphs here. One because I like to give you a bit of a historical picture. The graph on the left shows you what inflation was like in the 1970s. You can see that inflation was 26% at one point. That meant that prices at the end of a particular year were more than a quarter higher than they were at the beginning of the year. Since then, it's calmed down quite a lot. The graph on the right hand side shows you the picture over the last 10 years, and you can see that broadly speaking, inflation's been round about 2.1%. Luckily, that's the government target, and you can see that over the last couple of years it's been below 2%. If you look at the increase between 2016 and 2018, when it went up from about 1.5% up to nearly 3%, that was largely because the value of the pound fell after the Brexit referendum vote. Again, we'll be looking at that when we do our notes on the exchange rate. If we look at the impact of inflation on business, well, if there's a positive inflation rate, then probably our costs are going to be higher. So the questions are, can we pass those costs on to the consumer? That's going to be largely dependent upon something you've studied on theme 1, which is the price elasticity of demand. If elasticity of demand is high, then we can't pass those higher costs on without losing quite a few of our customers. For example, if, say, we are a short-haul airline firm like EasyJet, they're in a really fiercely competitive market, and if they increase their prices, then consumers are just going to go to one of the dozens of other airlines that they can get flights from. Of course, bear in mind that all airlines will be suffering from the same inflation, so maybe that could be a bit of your counterbalance there. If you can't increase the price, then maybe you'll have to absorb those higher costs by taking a knock on profits. Or alternatively, you could look at other costs that maybe you can control. So you might, for example, look at your labour costs, or you might do something sneaky. Like a couple of years ago, cocoa beans were rising in price and sugar wasn't. So what a number of the chocolate firms did was they slightly changed their product so that they had a little bit more sugar and a little bit less cocoa bean. Or alternatively, one other thing that they did was they completely adapted the product. There's a process that's called shrinkflation that was quite noticeable a few years ago. If you think that the quantity of sweets that you bought, you bought a typical Toblerone or you bought a typical Snickers bar a few years ago, if you think that that's smaller now, it isn't that you've got bigger, it did actually get smaller. That diagram on the right hand side shows the change in weights since 2014. So you can see a Snickers bar has fallen by more than a quarter for the same price. Twix bar by 20%. Even lovely Jaffa cakes fell in quantity by nearly a fifth. if you look at the application, as ever, you do need to look at the particular costs that the firm has. Not generally we're looking at the particular firm. So if, say, you are, again, if we take EasyJet as an example, if the price of fuel goes up, then that's going to have a particular impact on EasyJet. At the moment, the price of fuel seems to be falling by quite a lot. So EasyJet are going to be quite happy there. Whereas fuel is also used in a number of other businesses, but it's nothing like as important in those particular businesses. The second thing that we need to look at in terms of business is, will it reduce our competitiveness on world markets? So we could, for example, be competing against another producer in the UK market, or we could be trying to compete with them worldwide. Again, that would then depend upon whether our inflation is higher than, say, American inflation or Chinese inflation or EU inflation or whatever. And yet the other thing that it will depend upon is changes in the exchange rate that we'll be doing on another set of slides.